be afraid of the dark. At the end of the storm, there's a golden sky and the sweet silver song of the lark.
Hello, welcome to You'll Never Walk Alone World. We are back on our live shows. The last show we had George Scott from the Lost Shankly Boy, and well, we're back today in at a different time. We usually go live at 11 a.m. Mexico time and 7 p.m. Liverpool time, but today we have a very special guest. He's all the way in Malaysia, so we didn't want to wake him up at 4 or 3 in the morning, so it's still early there, but we're very happy to have an author of another LFC books. We're going to be talking about that book called Shanks Yanks and Shanks Yanks and Jürgen. So let's welcome Bob Holmes. So he's here. Welcome, Bob. How are you?
Thanks very much. I'm very good, thank you, Raul. And first of all, I really appreciate you changing the schedule for me. That is a great honor. Thinking of my Zeds, I have woken up at 3 in the morning to do a podcast before, and I've certainly woken up at 3 in the morning to watch a football match. So I was prepared to do it, but okay. I'm glad you didn't ask me to.
Yes, I bet you did. I mean, you told us to that you could do it, but there's no need to, and the honor is ours. We were very happy, and well, we were waiting. Finally, we were able to have you on the show. We're really glad to have you. I mean, we haven't read your book yet, but we can't wait on Kimba and I to read the book. I can't wait to read it. And well, a good friend of ours, Jeff Golding, has talking to us about you, about your book. I know you're also friends with Jeff.
Yeah, that's right. I'll just show you the book. I'll hold it up here if you can see it. We'll probably do this again. Shanks, Yanks, and Jürgen. That's the title of the book.
Okay.
And I think you've got an idea what it's about. Needs a little explanation, but it's basically a comparison between Jurgen Klopp and Bill Shankly. And although they're very different men, obviously, from different ages, different countries and all that, but about 3 years ago when Klopp started to make an impression at Liverpool, I saw traits of Shankly. And I'm old enough to remember Shanks in his pomp. And he was all about the team and the fans. And I saw this in Jurgen Klopp. It was almost uncanny. Different styles, yes. But basically, the ethos was the same. And you remember, you must have read about Bill Shankly's Holy Trinity. And that was the players, the fans, and the manager. And the directors, ? They're only there to write the checks. Now, that's one of Shanks' most famous quotes. It's even inscribed on walls in various places. And although Klopp was a little cautious, he certainly had the other two in the Trinity, the fans and the players. And I think he's built this Liverpool based on the Shankly template from long ago. And that's really the gist of it. So I go back to Shankly's beginnings at the foundation, because I realized that although a lot of Liverpool fans know the story, certainly in Liverpool, they know it off the top of their heads. But around the world, perhaps they don't know Shanks so well. And after all, he was a completely different generation. So I do go into some depth about explaining who he is. And I think it's critical, probably for a lot of your listeners and viewers, to know who he was, because he was really the founding father of Liverpool. I mean, he didn't take over till 1959, and they'd been going a long time since, from 1892, obviously been going a long time, and they'd won the title 5 times already. But the Liverpool we know today really started from him, because they weren't very good back then. In fact, when he walked into the ground, he walked into Anfield for the first time, and then the training ground, he described them as shambles. The grass was growing, the toilets wouldn't flush. You know what he said about the training ground, Melwood, which they're just leaving now to take up residence in the new, spanking new place at Kirby. He said it was so rough. I mean, it was not like a training ground. It was more like a golf course, and there were holes in it and all sorts. And he said, and bear in mind, this was 12 or 14 years after the Second World War. He said, it looks like the Germans have been over, meaning the German bombers from the war. That kind of talk resonated back then. Of course, he never knew there was going to be a German manager coming in. I mean, that is the great irony. But he took over Liverpool, and they were low in the lower reaches of the second division, the old second division. And he came from Huddersfield, who are there now. Huddersfield had just beaten Liverpool 5-0. And that was the final straw for the directors of Liverpool. And they said, enough is enough, and we want to get a new manager. And they asked Shankly to take over. Excuse me, I'll need a drink after that.
Yeah. Really interesting, but yes.
Right, I'm still here.
Yes, really, really interesting. I mean, and the similar things there are between Bill Shankly and Jurgen Klopp. It's obviously different eras. I mean, football is totally different. The world is totally different. And I mean, right now, football is all about sponsors and they're rock stars. But yes, there are similar things. Obviously, Jurgen cannot be outside with the people like Shankly did, and but I bet if he could, he would. But tell us, I mean, they are similar, but tell us, you've lived that football back then and football right now. Tell us the differences that you see between Liverpool Football Club back then and today.
Oh, absolutely huge. I mean, it's the money, isn't it, that's made the difference. I mean, back then, the players didn't get much more money than the average working man. I mean, they used to take the bus to the games, and they used to talk to fans on the bus. That kind of closeness with the fans. I mean, unthinkable today, isn't it? Absolutely unthinkable.
No.
And
no.
A lot of people wonder just how Bill Shankly would have handled the modern game, the millionaire players with their flashy cars and all that. And obviously, he wouldn't have liked that aspect. I think everyone agrees about that. And even things like wearing headphones, ignoring fans who want the autographs and that type of thing, he would have absolutely hated that. So, yes, I would have found that difficult to deal with. But on the other hand, Shanks was no dinosaur. on the other hand, he was very innovative. I mean, he was almost the
Yes.
Arsene Wenger of that era, pre-war, pre-Second World War. How many wars here? He was born before the First World War, of course. But yeah, I mean, when he was a player at Preston North End, he was into massages and having ice baths and warming down and not eating too much before the game. All this kind of stuff that Arsene Wenger introduced in around 2000 or late 1990s, remember, which was regarded as almost revolutionary. And I mean, there was one time when Preston had to play Plymouth Argyle, a small team in the far southwest of the country, and there were no highways or anything then, and it was going to take about 10 hours to get there. Now, this is 1930s, and Shanks said, well, why don't we fly? Now, there were no planes. I mean, only the government had planes in those days, you know. But he was talking about flying down there to save the hassle of the bus journey so that the players would be fresh for the game. And he came up with that in the 1930s. Of course, they didn't do it. But Arsene Wenger did it at Arsenal when they played Norwich, which was a much closer game, a much nearer ground. And some of your listeners will remember this. They got a lot of stick for that. It was a 15-minute flight, but it would have taken a couple of hours by bus. And Wenger wanted to make sure the players were fresh for the kickoff. So they flew. And, all the environmentalists said, you're polluting the atmosphere with this unnecessary flight and all the rest. But, I mean, Shankly was prepared to do that in 1930 before there were any planes. So there you are. He was always ahead of his time. And although he wouldn't have liked those aspects of the game, which I've mentioned, on the other hand, he would have been the first guy to grab all the data about opposing players and transfer targets and all that. He would have taken a crash course on computers to figure it all out. You can guarantee that, because he wanted the best for his team no matter what.
Yes, he was revolutionary, and he was. It was the beginning. He was the one that started building the Liverpool we know today. I mean, even wearing all red, he understood very well the importance of the fans, and that's why we see right now how Liverpool fans are. And well, obviously, in this era of the internet and that we are closer together, we're even able to have shows like this that I'm talking live to you in Malaysia. I mean, Liverpool is a world phenomenon. There are fans all over the world now. So tell us, how do you see the fans in Malaysia? Is there lots of Liverpool fans over there?
Yeah, they are. I'll just try and show you my shirt here. I'm wearing the local supporters club. I think I've got to tilt my screen a little bit. Can you see it?
Oh yeah,
the KL Copites there. Yeah, you can see it. Yeah. Yes. That's just one of the fan clubs here. They're just like they are in Liverpool, and like they are all over the place. It's amazing. They have this fanaticism, which I don't think any other club has. I mean, I'm not from Liverpool. You can tell my accent is different. But I mean, I've always been a Shankly man, because he was the manager that every kid wanted their club to have back in those days when he was at Liverpool, because of his fantastic humor, his quotes, his rapport, and he used to come on TV and he was so charismatic, and he just grabbed your attention. But I actually come from Nottingham, and I'm a Nottingham Forest supporter, and I hope that, by not being from Liverpool, gives a little perspective on the book But you'll see that I agree with this campaign that they had, This Means More. Remember that a couple of years ago,
Yes.
a marketing campaign, and it was Jurgen Klopp did the voiceover, and it was about we don't have a ground, we have a home, we don't have a song, we have an anthem, all that. And they were criticized for this by other fans for being a bit arrogant. But I mean, as a neutral fan, I think it does mean more, to be honest, and that's why they've got this phenomenal following around the world. I mean, only United can compare, but they don't quite have the passion somehow, and they're all there when United are winning, but go a bit quiet when they lose. Whereas Liverpool fans, they've retained their passion throughout the 30 years of title drought. I mean, I think that's a good example. I mean, okay, they went a bit quiet, but they didn't switch sides or anything. That support essentially remained throughout. Okay, they won a couple of cups in that time, but still, they didn't win the Holy Grail of the league, and yet they maintained the support. So, and I think the difference is it's in the foundation that Bill Shankly laid, this unique template. And what he used to do, he lived in a very ordinary house, and people used to go around there tentatively at first, thinking they might see the great man or, exchange a word over the fence or something. But they got a lot more than that. He used to invite them in. They'd have tea. He would give them tickets for games. And then, of course, there was like a stampede, and they had to tarmac his lawn. He had a nice little garden out there at one time, but it was just overrun by fans congregating to the house. So he had to tarmac it over, sadly. But in the course of doing that, he built up this incredible rapport with the fans, and word got around, and they absolutely loved him. And although Klopp can't do that now, I mean, they'd have, security out there and all that. It wouldn't be possible. But Klopp, I think, is the nearest thing to Shankly in having a rapport with the fans.
Yes, totally. It's amazing. It's really a phenomenon. I mean, I see it. I don't see it with other clubs. Of course, titles are important, but it's not the most important thing in Liverpool. The fans are. I mean, I see it. I'm from Mexico. I'm a Liverpool fan, and I see the fans here, and now that I'm connected to fans in the UK with you, in Malaysia, in Indonesia, in the United States, and even if we don't know each other, we have that bond. We understand each other with that Liverpool craziness. And before the pandemic, that I was able to travel, the first experience I had with a fan club was in El Salvador. I contacted them. And I met them there in El Salvador, but I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know them. I didn't know any one of them. So I saw them at a restaurant. And as soon as they saw me with the Liverpool jersey, they came to me, they hugged me, they took me, and we went to the place where they watched the game. We had beers, and it was like if they were my longtime friends. And that's really something that I think only Liverpool has.
Yeah, to that extent, yeah, absolutely. I mean, there are many tales from fans here who went to Istanbul for the famous final in 2005, and they said that they were meeting fans from all over the world, but as soon as they saw they were Liverpool fans, they saw the crest and the shirt or whatever, they were like blood brothers, and and some have stayed friends since then. It's a remarkable thing, and I think it's that depth that goes back to Shankly, and the fact that they continued it. I mean, Bob Paisley won more trophies than Bill Shankly in less time, but Shankly was the founding father. I tell Indian guys here, many Malaysian Indians, I said, if you don't know Bill Shankly, it's like you not knowing Mahatma Gandhi, or an American not knowing George Washington or something like that. I mean,
Yes.
It is okay. Maybe you laugh, but it is a bit like that.
It is.
And that's why I go into such depth about his upbringing. And I think it is quite remarkable that had he not been a good footballer himself, he would have spent his life down a coal mine. But that village where he came from produced 50 professional footballers. And it was a village of just a few hundred people. I mean, it's incredible. Shankly was one of 5 brothers, and all of them played professional football. He was the best, but he said, me and my brothers, we could beat any 5 brothers in the world, and I reckon they could. They were that good.
Wow, that's amazing. And we have a question right now. Cynthia is asking us, do you think money changed the essence of the spirit of Shankly's Liverpool?
Well, yes and no. I mean, it's changed the essence of the spirit of football and of most clubs, sadly. Liverpool, again, going back to this ethos and all that people's club thing, they have survived. I think the essence and spirit has survived. It's had a buffeting. I mean, the previous owners, they really gave it a buffeting, didn't they? Hicks and Gillette. And the reason I call the book Shanks Yanks and Jürgen is because there's quite a bit about the American owners, both sets of them, the good and the bad. They were also ugly. Hicks and Gillette really took Liverpool to the brink. And again, it was the fans that helped save them, played a big part in the saving of Liverpool. And then we have the current owners, and they've been good, unquestionably. But, and there are buts, they have made mistakes, and they've stepped out of line, I would say, out of Shankly's line, certainly. On a few occasions, remember ticket prices, they try to put them up. The latest thing about the Super League, and marketing Liverpool as having a trademark of Liverpool. They've overreached themselves on a few occasions, and each time they've been dragged back by the union called none other than the Spirit of Shankly. I mean, typical Liverpool, they don't just form a supporters association, they form a union. What do they call it? Spirit of Shankly. I mean, there's a reason for all this. And they have, the current American owners have had the decency to apologize. I mean, they remember when the pandemic hit and there was that furlough scheme, government furlough scheme where businesses got 80% of their money, and Liverpool jumped on that bandwagon straight away. And it, big club like Liverpool, owned by billionaires, what are they doing grabbing the money like that from the taxpayer? Well, Spirit of Shankly told them straight away, and they backed off, and they withdrew the thing, apologized, and we carried on. So they're not afraid to apologize. I'll give them that. But they are, they're out for the buck, aren't they? They're out to make a profit. There's no question about that. people's club. I mean, I once used a headline called "Are Liverpool the People's Billionaires?" I mean, you know, it's a contradiction in terms, but in a way, they are.
Yes.
I mean, you've got to have billionaire owners now to just about to be in the Premier League. Never mind win the Champions League. So yes, they need that, but they've got to toe the line. And to a large extent, the FSG group have done that. I'll give them credit for that. As I say, they've crossed it a few times, but up to now, they've always pulled back. So yes, they're not afraid to go and spend 75 million on a defender, which is still Harry Maguire passed it, didn't he? But it was a world record for a couple of years on Van Dijk. I mean, you need that if you're going to win the Champions League. You need that. And Bill Shankly was never afraid, for all his socialist beliefs. He was never afraid of going to the directors and saying, "I want this guy, I want that guy," and he did sign a couple of players for £100,000, which in his day was like paying 100 million now. Tony Hateley was one, I remember. £100,000. I mean, people were saying, "Are you crazy? You know, how can a player be worth that much?" Well, no. Well, we know the answer now, don't we? So that, I hope that goes some way to answering the question. I think they are closer to it, closer to retaining it than anybody else. Put it like that.
I mean, that's another thing that I've never seen with another club. Talking about the spirit of Shankly, especially what they did back when Gillette was the owner, Hicks and Gillette. But I've never seen it. I mean, right now, Barcelona is going through so many scandals and trouble. But the huge teams like Madrid, Barcelona, United, fans would never do that or wouldn't be able to do what the spirit of Shankly did. It's unbelievable, and it's also unique worldwide.
Yeah, it is. And it was formed appropriately enough in the very pub where Liverpool actually broke away from Everton in 1892. That's when they did it, when Hicks and Gillette were really driving Liverpool to the brink. The fans gathered, 300 of them, hardcore fans, and for historic significance, that is where Liverpool were formed, and they formed a union. Actually, they originally called it the Sons of Shankly, but were quickly corrected by the female members of the fan club that was a bit sexist, so they changed it to Spirit of Shankly, and they have acted like a watchdog almost on Liverpool. They keep FSG in line, basically, or have done until this latest business about breakaway leagues and stuff like that. And that is an ongoing saga, which we haven't got time to get into right now.
Well, and I think that the name, I mean, the spirit of Shankly, because I mean, the spirit of Shankly it's present. It's always present when it comes to Liverpool Football Club. So I think it's a great name. And well, you already told us why. Also, you have that Yanks in the title of the book. Because I was going to ask you that, but you already answered. So basically, in this book, you compare Shankly to club, but also talking with the American owners.
Yeah, I included them because they first start, they contrast very starkly, don't they? Their behavior of them. I mean, I think it's fair to say that Hicks and Gillette were cowboys. They had no feel for the club whatsoever. They just wanted to make a buck. And they lied about how much money they were putting in, which is why Liverpool got into the financial mess. FSG have been completely different and open and above board about their finances and all that. And if they've been criticized, they were a bit slow in the beginning, but they took their time. I mean, people in Mexico will know more about the Boston Red Sox than some other places in the world. But they own them, and they inherited a similar situation, i.e. a famous old club in a famous old ground, but which was in need of repair. And people were talking about building a new stadium in Boston, weren't they? But they took their time, they analyzed it all, and they decided in the end to stay at Fenway Park, and hence the name Fenway Sports Group. Yeah. And so they realized that that had been a success, and they looked at Anfield, a storied ground. Why give up Anfield? I mean, you know, you're one goal up when you kick off at Anfield. Why give that up? So they decided to use the same blueprint, rebuild the ground, but stay there and still have that name and still have that sign. This is Anfield, and the intimidating factor it has on the opposition. So they did that, but the title actually comes from a banner which at the height of the Hicks and Gillette debacle, there were banners on the Kop saying built by Shanks, broke by Yanks. There were quite a few of those. And I've got a picture of one of them in the book. And that gave, you know, that resonated around Liverpool for a while. Built by Shanks, broke by Yanks. And I thought that's a good title for the book. But then, you know, it would have been. But I mean, you can't accuse FSG of breaking Liverpool, can you? You can. Hicks and Gillette, yes, but they put it back together again. So it was a bit more complicated than that. So I just called it Yanks.
Okay. Yeah, it's a really interesting book. And I mean, it's not the only football book you have, but I mean, you're in Malaysia now. You've been there, you were telling me, for 25 years. But when did you start writing, and why did you start writing football books?
Well, it's a long story. I'm a sports writer by trade. I am a sports journalist, but I wasn't straight away. I actually traveled the world, and I came to Mexico in 1970, as I told you before we came on air, to see the World Cup in Mexico. And I still think, and most people do, that it was the best World Cup ever. I mean, you had the best Brazilian team ever. I mean, there've been some great Brazilian teams, but this one was absolutely incredible. I mean, Pelé was at his peak. I mean, Jairzinho, Rivaldo, Aldo. I mean, you know, the names resonate.
Carlos Alberto.
And I was privileged to see that, and I saw it as a fan, supporting England, of course. And I wanted to see the world, basically, when I was a teenager, before I decided what I want to do in life. But I was a big football fan, and England had won the World Cup in '66. And I thought, well, I actually stayed to watch that. I thought it was a bit silly. Well, the World Cup's being played in your own country. A bit silly to leave the country now. So I saw that before I took off around the world. And I timed my world trip to arrive in Mexico in 1970. See, it took me over 3 years. And I don't regret it to this day. It was an absolutely fantastic experience. And Mexico is a fantastic country. I mean, I've traveled in it quite widely. climbed Mount Popocatépetl. I've been to the Yucatan Peninsula. I've been around. Guadalajara was a lovely city. England and Brazil were based there. So
Yes.
I've got fond memories of Mexico. And then I decided after all this, I'd go back and be a sports writer. So I've done that because of the fantastic interest in English football in Malaysia and in the whole of Southeast Asia. I'm able to do that. I'm on a radio program. I write columns in newspapers. Such is the interest in English football. And half the fans here, probably more than half, are Liverpool fans. I mean, it's so, great. There's a lot of interest.
Wow. And I'm also a football fan myself. I love football. Of course, I like Liverpool and the Premier League, but I also love all the Champions League, the World Cup, the Mexican League. Obviously, I watch it before the pandemic. I used to go all the time to the stadium. And I've been to games in the Europa League and different leagues around the world. And the essence of the game is the same all over the world. But obviously, football, there are certain things that are lived different in each country. So what are the differences you see between football fans in the UK and in Southeast Asia?
Well, football fans in the UK support their home team to a large extent. It used to be unanimous. I mean, if you came from a town whose club happened to be in the 3rd division, you still supported them because it was your team, and it was just tough that they were down there and never going to do anything. But now the younger people are switching, to the big teams. In Southeast Asia, of course, they don't have that loyalty, obviously, hometown loyalty. So they just get it from TV. So they're bound to support the big teams. That's the thing. You can't blame them for that. You don't find any Halifax town supporters in Malaysia, or Rochdale supporters, or anybody like that. And you can't expect that. So they're only going to support the big teams. And the reason for the Liverpool thing is because it's spanned generations. When TV first came out in Malaysia in the 60s, Liverpool were under Shankly. And some old-timers who've read my book remember Shankly very well. And they were hooked then. And it's a generational thing. And you pass it down. And they pass it down to their sons. And they grew up in the late sort of Paisley era and Dalglish. And then the next generation came along. And now we're into about the 4th generation, but they've still had this loyalty passed down. And most fans follow the club that their father supported, don't they? Because he's the one that usually introduces them to football or takes them to the game, whatever. That's absolutely natural. So because of that, the fans do stay loyal, and they know their stuff. They get the same feeds of information from the websites. They're reading the same stuff. They're watching the same games as people all over the world. And they form this great brotherhood around the world, so that when they do end up meeting, like in Istanbul, for example, as I mentioned, there is a bond immediately. Even if might be a language difficulty sometimes, they manage to overcome it. Yeah. Football is an international language.
It is. Yes, it is totally. And Bob, I mean, where can we get your books online on Amazon or something, or where can we get them?
You can. Yep. It's on Amazon. I mean, it's going to take a bit of time to be delivered, but Amazon is probably the best thing where you are. given its global reach. But the book is being published in the US next year.
Okay.
So
Great.
for those who, I'm not sure of the details yet, but I know it is. Must be that Yanks in the title, I think. Eh? But for those who can't wait to read it, I imagine there might be one or two. It is available on Amazon and also on Pitch Publishing. I can send you the link if you want to send it out to your members. I think I did actually in the first place.
Yeah,
I sent you a link with Amazon reviews and stuff on it.
Yes, we will share it on the page. And yeah, I'm one of those who can't wait. But we will also be waiting when you tell us that it's published in the US, so we can also share the link. And Bob, it has been a pleasure to be talking to you. Really, thanks for being here. We're going to have another show or another Zoom meeting to talk about football, because it's really interesting talking about football with you. And thanks a lot for being here.
Well, thank you very much, Raul. I really enjoyed it. And again, I appreciate your accommodation with the time and having me on in the first place. And I hope some of your members will manage to get the book and enjoy it. Thanks a lot.
Yes, definitely. Very interesting book, Shanks, Yanks and Jürgen. Go to Amazon, Pitch Publishing. We're going to share the link. But if you're a football fan, you must read Bob Holmes' books. Thanks a lot, Bob. Thanks a lot to the people watching. See you next time. And remember, no, it was not. It was the same comment. And see you next time. And remember that when you support Liverpool, you will never walk alone. See you next time.
Okay, cheers.